Welcome to SRC University, your source for retirement education. Today's topic is a very important one. We're going to talk about Medicaid strategies for couples, talk about how you can use the Medicaid system to help pay for long-term care in a nursing home. We created SRC University to give people very important retirement education. And our series is going to be on a variety of topics. Each of the sessions is about 30 minutes, so they're short, they're brief. They're available on your schedule. You can come back and listen to them on our website at any time. And they explain topics that's in our book, More Money for Retirement. If you haven't gotten a copy of the book yet, you can download it free off of our website, srctexas.com, or you can drop us an email. We're happy to mail you a copy. And the goal of this whole program is to help people create a safe, secure retirement. Best part, there's no final exam. So how do we help at SRC, Senior Resource Center? We do four important things. We help clients with comprehensive retirement planning so their money lasts as long as they do. We do tax planning, not tax preparation, to help people pay less tax. We do a lot of long-term care planning, and that's what today's topic is going to focus on. And we also do estate planning, helping people avoid probate and pass assets privately to the next generation. So today's topics, we'll talk about what is long-term care, the cost of long-term care and where it's received. We'll talk about paying for long-term care, different strategies that exist. And then we're going to focus principally on one strategy today, and that's Medicaid. We'll dispel some of the significant myths that surround the Medicaid program. We'll talk about exempt and countable assets because the state divides up assets, and we'll talk about what falls into each category. And then finally, we'll talk about strategies to protect both assets and income. But let me give you a little foreshadowing. We're going to show you ways that couples in Texas can protect all of their assets and qualify one spouse for Medicaid. So what is the challenge that we face? The greatest financial risk most of us will face in retirement is paying for long-term care. This is one of those topics people don't like to think about, but when it occurs, it can be devastating both financially, emotionally, physically. It places demands on both spouses. So having a plan to pay for long-term care is really critical to having a safe, secure retirement. And, kind of what's fostered all this, we're living much, much longer. Used to be, people would work for 30 or 40 years, they'd retire, and 2 or 3 years later, they'd be in heaven and no problem. But as we see today, most people are living much, much longer. And the longer you live, the greater the chance that you'll need some form of long-term care. Statistics tell us that women on average need about 3.7 years, some more, some less, and men a little bit less, 2.2 years. So what is the couple's challenge? Well, what we found is that the spouse providing care for the other spouse can often wear out. Long-term care can be very physically demanding, and it places emotional strains on the happy or the healthy community spouse. So we want to avoid wearing out the other spouse. We don't want long-term care for one spouse to bankrupt the other spouse because after one spouse goes to heaven, the other spouse needs to have resources to live comfortably. And obviously, long-term care expense also reduces the ability of people to leave a legacy for their children or grandchildren. That's important for a lot of folks. So what is long-term care? The doctors tell us it kind of falls into two categories, either physical impairment or cognitive impairment. Physical impairment is defined by activities of daily living. And for Medicaid, they include eating, physically feeding yourself, not food prep, dressing, bathing, transference or mobility, toileting, and incontinence, wearing diapers. When you trigger 2 of these 6 activities, you're eligible for, or you're needing long-term care, and you'd be eligible for Medicaid. The other option is cognitive impairment. Many people today, my dad was an example, he had Alzheimer's, he had cognitive impairment, and he got to a point where he needed to live in a protected environment, needed 24/7 supervision, and needed help with medicine management. So if you know someone that has either substantial cognitive impairment or physical impairment, they are receiving long-term care and are eligible for benefits. Where do we get care? Well, it can vary a lot of different places. Most care is actually rendered in a home environment. As we age, we want to stay in home as long as possible. And if you're bringing in a caregiver several hours a day, the cost can be fairly minimal. But if you get to a point where you're bringing in someone, say 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, the cost can go up dramatically. And we know families that have spent in excess of $15,000, $18,000 a month to provide home-based long-term care. Another option is independent living. Oftentimes people get tired of maintaining a home, and so they'll move into a senior housing complex. And there the prices can range $1,500, maybe up to $2,500 a month. And you pretty much maintain your own independent lifestyle. You do your own cooking. The next step is assisted living. And when you move into assisted living, prices can vary anywhere from, say, $3,500 up to $6,500. Oftentimes, memory care is classified as assisted living. That's where people have cognitive impairment. And in assisted living, someone else is doing the cooking and the cleaning. You have your own living space, your own apartment, but you're receiving hands-on assistance with some of those activities of daily living. And then the final option is skilled nursing. And that's an important one in today's talk because that's where Medicaid comes in and provides help paying for the care. In skilled nursing, costs can range anywhere from, at the low end, $5,500 up to over $9,000. And several years ago, AARP did a survey of seniors. They wanted to know what the reasons were why seniors go broke in retirement. And sometimes we joke about this. It isn't Bernie Madoff. It isn't overspending or taxes. Those can play a role. But unfortunately, the number one reason many seniors go broke in retirement is trying to pay for long-term care. Because as you see from the numbers up above, it's expensive. So there's a number of ways to pay for long-term care. And we break it into 5 general categories. First one is pretty obvious, private pay. You can use your savings to hire caregivers to come in and render care. And that works up to a point. Medicare is another option. We call Medicare short-term long-term care. If you spend 3 nights in a hospital and then transition to a rehabilitation facility for long-term care, for rehab, Medicare will usually pick up the first 20 days. If you then have a Medicare supplement, it can pick up to an additional 80 days. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan, those plans vary, but they can provide additional coverage. But to keep Medicare coverage going, you have to make progress. So if people plateau or level out, that's generally when Medicare stops paying. 3 other options, veterans benefits. We have a separate webinar on just VA aid and attendance. It's a whole different program that was created by Congress to help wartime veterans and their spouses pay for long-term care. Today's topic is Medicaid. And as we'll see, that's an ideal solution if people need care in a skilled nursing facility. And the 5th option are a variety of insurance products. We'll have a future webinar coming out in SRC University talking about different kinds of products that you can tap into to not spend down your own savings. So let's talk about Medicaid benefits. And as I've said, this is a skilled nursing home only solution. You can't get Medicaid easily at home. To get it in assisted living is almost impossible. So this is a skilled nursing solution. The eligibility requirements include, 1, you have to be in a Medicaid bed. Now, this is not a brand of bed. This is a bed that the nursing home has contracted with the state of Texas to accept Medicaid as a form of payment. So if a nursing home has 100 beds and they have a 50-bed contract and they currently have 50 Medicaid residents, then there's usually a waiting list. The third criteria is medical necessity, and we've already touched on that. You need to have assistance with 2 of 6 activities of daily living, or you need to have substantial cognitive impairment. And then finally, there's income and asset criteria that allow people to become eligible. So when we work with couples, we have 2 simple goals. And the first one is protect all marital assets. We don't want you spending down your money. If you worked in this country and paid taxes, you have funded the Medicaid program. And all we're doing is helping families tap into this very important benefit. The second goal is protect not only the community spouse's income, we can do that, but sometimes we can protect some or all of the nursing home spouse's income. So protect assets, protect income. So before we go into different strategies for protecting those important things, assets and income, I want to dispel a number of Medicaid myths, because we hear these every week when people come to visit us. They've heard from their uncle or their friend or their neighbor about myths that they believe to be true. And unfortunately, if you operate under misconceptions, sometimes you end up spending money or not taking advantage of Medicaid benefits. The first one, this is real important. A lot of people tell us, well, you got to be broke to get on Medicaid. I've already told you, we can show clients, couples, how to protect all of their marital assets, not to spend down any of it. So this notion you have to be broke, it's a myth, but if you believe it, you'll end up spending money at the nursing home. A second important myth is my income is too high. As we'll see, there is an income limit to get on Medicaid benefits. But the good news is there's a waiver program anyone can take advantage of. So if you're above the income limit, you set up a special checking account at a major bank and you can qualify for Medicaid benefits. A third one is the quality of care is poor under Medicaid. And this was a true statement going back 15, 20 years ago. But things have changed dramatically. To operate a nursing home in the state of Texas, the nursing home has to maintain a large liability policy. And in the old days, people were discriminated against. The people on Medicaid received less care, less help than people who were private pay. That changed when attorneys started suing nursing homes. And today, the quality of care is consistent between private pay or Medicaid. A fourth myth is I can give away my assets. And this is a strategy, gifting is a strategy we use with single people, but generally with couples, gifting assets doesn't make any sense because gifting always creates a period of ineligibility. There is a right way and a wrong way to gift assets, and we'll cover the strategy for gifting assets in another webinar on Medicaid for singles, for single people. The last myth that a lot of people tell us, I've heard that I'm going to lose my home. Well, Texas is a Medicaid estate recovery state, which means after the Medicaid recipient dies, the state does try to recover from the sale of a home. That's the only asset they can claim against, to recover from the sale of the home what they spent on care. But there's a simple redeeding process that shields the home from Medicaid estate recovery. We've never had a family lose their home. It's always passed to the next generation. So let's talk about assets. And I want to distinguish between exempt assets and countable assets. And there's different categories. And what's important is to know first what is exempt, and then with each of the countable assets, we'll talk about different strategies to protect them. The first and most important asset, your home, with any contiguous land that's not subdivided by a county road, is considered an exempt asset. So your home is safe, and we'll talk about ways to protect it. One car is exempt of any value. So it could be a 2002 Honda, or it could be a 2024 Lexus. It doesn't matter, one car is exempt. Burial programs for both spouses are exempt if they've been made irrevocable, which means after you've paid for the policy, you sign a one-page waiver saying, I agree not to be able to surrender my burial policy for cash value. People wouldn't anyway, but you've got to make the policies irrevocable. Business assets are exempt if you file taxes. So if you have a hardware store or a ranch and you're operating that business as an active business interest, we have ways of exempting business assets. Mineral rights are also something that can be exempt if the value of the mineral rights is less than $6,000. The state takes whatever the average monthly payout is from mineral rights and multiplies it by a number. And if that number is then less than 6,000, the mineral rights are an exempt asset. And finally, the protected resource amount. And we'll talk about how this is calculated, but that's a portion of countable assets that can be shielded by the community spouse. So what about countable assets? Well, pretty much everything else that we have is on the countable side of the ledger. And this is the money that we work very hard in our practice to help our clients protect. Bank accounts, there's checking, savings, money market accounts, those are CDs, those are all countable assets. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those are countable assets. Doesn't matter whose name's on the account or on the stock or bond or mutual fund account. We're a community property state, so all of this is in one central bucket. Retirement accounts are also countable: IRA, 401k, 403b, 457. Those are countable assets. If you have a second or third vehicle, or you have some equipment like a gator or a tractor, that can be a countable asset. And additional land. If I have a lot somewhere that's not contiguous with my home, that's also a countable asset. So these are the assets we're going to we focus on when we work with families to protect. So how are the assets divided up? Well, there's what's known as the snapshot date. And what the state does is the state takes all of the countable assets on the first of the month that some form of facility care begins that leads to a nursing home. So let's say on March 2nd, I go to the hospital, and then later in the month, I transfer to a skilled nursing home. Well, the state's going to go back to March 1st, the first of the month. And at that point, the state says, what does the couple have in total countable assets? And they're divided between the two spouses. Essentially, they fill up two buckets, one for the nursing home spouse and one for the community spouse. The community spouse can protect up to $154,140. That's the protected resource amount, that PRA amount that we mentioned earlier. What we need to do is to protect what's in the nursing home spouse's bucket. So let's simple example. Let's say the couple has $300,000. Each bucket would have 150 in it. If they have 200,000, each bucket would have 100,000 in it. Once again, the community spouse can protect their bucket. What we need to focus on is protecting what's in the nursing home spouse's bucket. So the first date we mentioned was the snapshot date. The eligibility date is the first of the month when the nursing home spouse's bucket has less than $2,000 in it. So going back to that example I gave you, enter the nursing home, say early March, transfer to the nursing or to the hospital and transfer to the nursing home. And the state does a snapshot and divides assets. Well, on the 1st of March, the spouse going into the nursing home has more than $2,000 in their bucket. So during the month of March, if assets are repositioned, if by April 1, the nursing home spouse's bucket has less than $2,000 in it, well, then they're eligible for Medicaid starting on April 1st. So let's talk about some simple asset protection strategies. The first one is obvious: pay bills. After that snapshot has occurred, if there's money in the nursing home spouse's bucket, we can pay bills, and might be a credit card balance, pay it down. Maybe you've got some property taxes that are coming due, pay it down. Any bill you pay is converting a countable asset into an exempt bill that's paid off. You could consider purchasing burial plans. If you do, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make them irrevocable. What if you have a home that still has a mortgage? Well, great time to pay down the mortgage using money in the nursing home spouse's bucket. You can also do maintenance or improvements on a homestead. Since the home is exempt, when you take money out of, say, a checking account and use it to put a new roof on a house or paint the front hall, that's converting a countable asset to an exempt asset. We have a method within our strategies of exempting qualified accounts, IRA, 401k, 403b. Many people have a home and money in an IRA or a 401k, and we can show you how to protect all of those assets. They don't have to be spent down. Another option is what I call a spousal pension. The state has a different name for it, but under a spousal pension, essentially I could ask the nursing home spouse, hey, do you want to pay what's in your bucket to the nursing home, or would you like to redirect it to your community spouse that's still living at home? And usually the answer is, well, I'd rather pay my spouse rather than pay the nursing home. We can show people how to do that. And there's a variety of other strategies. When we build a plan, we provide kind of a buffet of options to the families we're working with. We don't tell them what to do. We say, here's what you can do. You can pick from the buffet one or more options to protect assets. So let's take an asset protection example. In this case, we've got a family that has a home, and that's on the left side of the page under an exempt asset. They have a very nice car. They have some burial programs that have been made exempt or irrevocable. And let's say they have a hardware store. Well, that's a business, so that's an exempt asset if they file tax returns for the business. So on the countable side, we've got $148,000 sitting in the bank, and we've got $52,000 in an IRA. So what does the state of Texas do? The snapshot date occurs, and they divide assets between the nursing home spouse and the community spouse. In this case, each spouse has $100,000 in their bucket. So our goal is we want to protect the $100,000 on the left side, that we want to either spend it down or protect it. Obviously, most people would prefer to protect it. So first thing we do is we reposition $52,000 of what was in the nursing home spouse's bucket. And by just repositioning it from a brokerage account into a different financial instrument, we've taken those IRA dollars off the table. They still exist for the family. They can still tap the money and use it. They still take required minimum distributions if they're over 73, but we've just exempted those funds. And the second thing we did in this case, we set up a spousal pension. I took the remaining $48,000 that was in the nursing home spouse's bucket. I asked the spouse, do you want to pay the nursing home, or do you want to pay your spouse at home? And hopefully that spouse said, I think I want to pay my spouse at home. So we funded a spousal pension that pays all of the 48 back. Guess what? The nursing home spouse's bucket is now empty, and that person's eligible for Medicaid benefits. What about couples' income strategies? Let's talk about what happens with income. The nursing home spouse's income is normally paid to the nursing home. There are some standard deductions. You get a deduction of $75 for personal needs. That person gets a deduction for any medical premiums they pay. So if I have a Medicare supplement or a drug plan or an Advantage plan that I pay premiums on, I get a deduction to continue those coverages. Beyond that, since I'm married, the state asks a simple question. Does my community spouse make more or less than $3,853.50? If they make less than $3,853 gross, I can transfer some of my income to the community spouse. So the Medicaid applicant's income, if it's greater than 2829, that's the Medicaid limit, but there's a workaround. I mentioned there's a waiver, so people above 2829 can still qualify for Medicaid. In this case, they set up what's called a qualified income trust checking account at a major bank. This is an account that earns no interest, it has no fees, but it allows somebody with income greater than 2829 to get on Medicaid. So let's take an example. We've got the nursing home spouse. That person has $2,000 of gross income. We have the community spouse that has two forms of income coming in, also totaling $2,000. So how much of our nursing home spouse's income is going to go to the nursing home? Well, let's find out. First, I mentioned they get a deduction of $75 for their own personal needs. Second, if they have, say, $200 of medical premiums, they get a deduction for that to continue any medical coverages that they want to retain. And then finally, the state asks a question, does my community spouse make more or less than $38.53? In this case, they make less than $38.53. So we can transfer additional money over to them. In this case, the remaining $17.25. And how much is my nursing home spouse now paying the nursing home? $0. So sometimes the amount the nursing home spouse pays could be as low as $0. Imagine buying a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 nursing home bed for no dollars. That's a pretty good deal. We can show you how to protect all of your assets and how to shield and protect, hopefully, much of your income. So let's summarize. With proper planning, couples can protect all of their assets. If you have questions on this, I want you to give us a call because we can show you how to do this. Hopefully couples can protect, we know they can protect all of the community spouse's income and some or all of the nursing home spouse's income. So next time somebody says, you got to be broke to get on Medicaid, what are you going to tell them? Call Senior Resource Center. Learn what you're eligible to do. Next time somebody says, my income is too high, I won't even think about applying for Medicaid, tell them to call Senior Resource Center, and we will help educate them on what they can do. So we've covered a lot in a very short period of time. You can listen to this webinar over again at your leisure. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a book, More Money for Retirement, that we give away free. You can download a PDF copy off our website, srctexas.com, or just drop us an email at one of the emails on the bottom of the screen, Bill, Tara, or Stacy at srctexas.com, and we'd be happy to mail you a copy for your reading at home. So with that, thank you for joining us, and look for a follow-on companion webinar in SRC University that deals with Medicaid for single people. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us.